I told myself it would be a daily nightmare. I told myself it would be too overwhelming. I told myself it would never be worth the time and effort. I was wrong, and those were the lies of fear and hesitation creeping in, trying to keep me from taking a big step in life, becoming a landlord. Want to know how I did it? Stay tuned for the 3 big things I did to make it happen. Owning real estate is something I never ever thought I could actually do. It sounds like something only certain people got to do. And that was until I read The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. I highly recommend this book. He spends a good portion of it dispelling common real estate and wealth building myths. And this really helped me get my head on straight and realize that owning real estate wasn't just doable, but actually kind of easy. Now, before I get carried away with sounding like a real estate mogul, let me just say that this is a journey, and my wife and I are still at the beginning of it. We currently have 1 property, and it's the home we used to live in. A couple of years ago, we bought a new primary home and kept the previous one in order to rent it out. But even that process of ensuring that we could qualify for both mortgages felt really daunting, as did all the legalities needed to properly register a home as a rental property with the local authorities. But in the end, this was all just my fear, again, making a mountain out of a molehill. I had 3 main fears and concerns going into this. First, complying with all rental housing laws. 2, finding, screening, and managing tenants and rental payments. And 3, taxes. I had no idea how to do taxes on a rental property properly. So, the first big thing I did to make this happen was learn. I learned the process of becoming a landlord. I learned the process of converting a home into a rental. I learned the different tax deductions and strategies. And what I found is, if you take time to research and prepare, being a landlord is not that complicated. It's just new. And when there are new things in play, we often tend to resist them. The second thing I did is, once I learned enough to feel comfortable, I planned how to best implement what I learned. I built workflows and processes for everything that I was learning that I needed to do. Everything that I could think of, and then I refined them in the 3rd step, execution. We took what we learned and planned and put it into action. We executed the plan. So now let's look at what the learning, planning, and execution looked like for each of my 3 areas of concern. I addressed these by researching the 3 key areas and what was A, required, and B, a good idea or best practice, even if it wasn't required. I looked at the 3 fears: my local, county, and state's rental housing and landlord requirements, different systems for property advertising, tenant applications, tenant screening, tenant onboarding, lease signing, and payments, and tax implications, deductions, and strategies. And what I found surprised me. This all seemed doable. The deeper I dove, the more I understood, and the less fear I had. Knowledge really is power. And if you're digging this breakdown so far, a like and a subscribe would help out. Thanks a bunch. So speaking of breakdowns, let's break down my takeaways from each category. From the local ordinances, I found that I needed to get a safety inspection that confirms that the home complies with special rental property requirements that the county has. A couple of minor DIY fixes and everything was set for this. It was really quite straightforward. The company I used for the inspection was recommended to me by our realtor. The house was built prior to 1978, so this meant that a lead paint test was also required because prior to 78, they used to have lead in the paint. This was also a simple inspection set up through a few emails with an inspector that was recommended by the safety inspection company. We had one windowsill in the entire house that failed the initial inspection and thus required remediation, which was just cleaning it really well and then repainting it, and then a retest. And it passed on the second test, and after that, we had our lead paint certificate. And then the info from the safety inspection and the lead paint inspection was then provided to the county on a rental property registration website that they have. And once approved, we had our permission to rent. Time to find tenants. This was the part that I was probably most nervous about, finding tenants. Renting out a house in which you've built so many memories, almost 10 years and 3 kids, is hard. You want to find someone who will be reliable in their rent payments and care for the home, treating it like their own. The challenging part is that this person will be a total stranger. And this is really where we lucked out. We ended up finding not one, but 2 tenants who were the children of people I went to high school with. One of whom I'd also gone to elementary and middle school with and known he and his entire family my entire life. This was a huge relief to us, to rent out our home to people we knew and could trust. And this did help us get our feet wet with a little less pressure, but honestly, we didn't take the pressure off of ourselves to be solid landlords. I also delved into a bunch of tools for property advertisement, tenant application screening and onboarding, lease signing, and rent payment. In the end, I settled on Rent Spree, and right now we're just using their screening and rent payment features and are still doing paper applications and lease signings in person on physical paper with wet signatures, but only because the first time I tried to do electronic versions of these items, I think I did a couple of things wrong and it just became more confusing for everyone. But now if we need a new tenant, they apply, we review their application, and if we accept them, we send them a URL for them to complete a background and credit check. And if that comes back okay, we send another URL for the security deposit and a third URL to set up automatic rent payments. It's quite nice, and I've been really happy with it. I'm looking forward to also implementing the application and rent signing tools to eventually, just to make it a completely digital process. I'm a big fan of workflows being simple and easy to understand, and getting rid of paper where we can. And that brings us to taxes. The part that if you get wrong, you can go to jail. I mean, okay, fine. It probably wouldn't really get to that point, but the point is that taxes are essential to get right, and they are one of the big benefits of real estate investment in the first place. So understanding them and doing them correctly is important. This involved a lot of books, podcasts, forums, and tax research. We were pretty confident that just for one rental property, we could handle completing the taxes ourselves. In the future, once we grow to more properties, a tax professional will most likely be used. But ultimately, this was just doing a lot of cross-reference research and knowing what to expect, and then keeping track of our expenses and our income. I also built a spreadsheet, and I think everyone knows by now how much I love spreadsheets, that I use to track these things. And what I did is that during the process of filing taxes, the first time we had to file them, I updated my expense spreadsheet to have the exact expense categories allowed by the IRS, or the ones that they define. So now, for all the years after that, the spreadsheet just has those categories already in place, and I can just fill in an expense and assign it to a known IRS category, which makes the filing process a lot more efficient. Now, the first year of taxes was a bit simpler than the second year, as in the first year we had lived in the home for part of the year, but the second tax year was our first full calendar year of the property being a rental. and all the numbers were bigger. All the expenses were now deductible. They're actually not deductible before the property is in service as a rental, even if the expense is for preparing the property to be a rental. I also used an app to track things like my mileage for the times I go to the house. I was there, just the other day to fix something minor. And that brings us to the final part of the landlording fears, the dreaded phone call in the middle of the night. And yes, this has happened once. There was a night that the smoke alarms went off, and in our county, they have to all be interconnected, so they all went off, but for no apparent reason. There was no fire, there was no smoke, and they got two of them to turn off, but the third one would not stop going off, and it had to be physically destroyed to get it to stop. Shockingly, we stopped using that make and model at the property. But otherwise, the calls are generally more straightforward. I mean, sure, we've had to get a plumber out there. We've had to replace the washing machine. But that's stuff that would have happened anyway if we were still living there. And most of the calls are simple things that I can resolve myself with a quick 20-minute drive, especially since I know the house inside and out after living in it for nearly a decade. All in all, we often go many weeks at a time without hearing from our tenants at all. And they really are great tenants, and we've enjoyed having them there. So in the end, we learned as much as we could. We developed a plan, and then we put it all into action. But those three things are just the logistics of being a landlord, but not what I think is really the part that brings it all together. And that's the relationship with the tenant. The thing I want to do most as a landlord is provide an experience that the tenants are happy with. I work really hard to communicate with them clearly in order to mitigate any potential misunderstandings and to set expectations properly. We primarily talk through text messages, but important stuff gets an email and then a text message about the email that I sent. I hold them all to the lease terms, but also provide flexibility, based on the reality of life, So, and if I say I'm going to be there at a specific day and time to do something, I stick to it. And if that has to change, I just communicate that to them. If they have a situation, I try to resolve it as quickly as possible. And so far, they keep renewing the lease, and that's what we want. Reliable tenants who take good care of the home. Our journey to becoming landlords has been surprisingly fun and enjoyable. And even though I know we will eventually have to do things we haven't done yet, I feel confident that we can repeat the process on other properties when we're ready. It turns out the fear wasn't real. It was just the unknown. Learn what you need to learn. Make a plan. Make the plan a reality. If you're a landlord, what's the biggest tip you'd give? If you want to be a landlord, what's holding you back? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, you know what to do. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time as we get good enough together. So, make it make. Make it, what does this say? Make it make. Make a plan. Make the plan a reality. What did I type?
I ain't done chasing, got big dreams, bigger things, impatient. Who's at the top think they need replacement?